Hello, welcome in our virtual training workshop of 21 days of effective communication. Today is our third day of this training and our topic is how to become an inclusive communicator. Now let's start with the name of Almighty Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Today we are going to discuss that how we become an inclusive communicator. Inclusive communication means sharing information in a way that everybody can understand them easily. In fact, inclusive communication makes services more accessible for everyone. They enables people to live more independently and to participate in their public life. In today's lecture, we will talk about what is an inclusive communication, how to become an inclusive communicator, along with the useful practice and some valuable tips that will help you to adopt it effectively. We all have our own opinions and want to share information in a way that everybody can easily understand them. Every human, regardless of their political and social background or individual characteristics, deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. Inclusive communication enables one to get information and expressing themselves in any way that meet their needs. We can say that inclusive communication means making sure that you recognize that people understand and express themselves in different ways. Anyway, did you ever think that what is inclusive communication? It is an approach that seeks to create a supportive and effective communication environment using every available means of communication to understand and be understood. Here a question arises that is inclusive communication really necessary? Respect the fact that some people think inclusive communication is too politically correct. However, wherever your personal view lands, you can quickly find yourself in trouble if you do not use inclusive communication. For instance, using sexist language in the workplace could land you in hot water with HR department or earn you a reputation as someone who doesn't keep up with modern etiquette. A good inclusive communicator takes care not to alienate or offend an entire group of people based on their personal attributes. They do not make assumptions based on an individual's characteristics. Inclusive communicator acknowledges and values diversity. Mastering this skill is increasingly important in the 21st century. Thanks to globalization, people from all backgrounds now work and socialize together. Inclusive communication builds harmonious relationship between individuals and it even boosts business performance. Research reflects a positive correlation between gender diversity, ethnic diversity, and profit in organization. Inclusive communication approach supports the use of speech that is simple, clear, and at the right level for the person's understanding. Body language that supports and matches the spoken word. Gestures that supports and match the spoken words. Signing that is done at the same time as speaking and in the same word order. Pictures, photos, graphics, and symbols that support both the spoken and written words. Objects that can be used to stand for people, location, or activities. Interactive approaches for those with profound learning disabilities and communication needs. An environment that provides all these type of communication will help everyone to communicate better whatever their individual needs. Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists recommended 5 good practice standards around speech, language, and communication. These 5 good communication standards are: Standard 1, there is a detailed description of how best to communicate with individuals. Standard 2 will tell you services is demonstrate how they support individuals with communication need to be involved with decisions about their care and their services. Standard 3 about staff values and use competency, the best approaches to communication with each individual they support. Standard 4 services create opportunities, relationships, and environments that make individuals want to communicate. And the last one, standard 5, individuals are supported to understand and express their needs in relation to their health and well-being. Barriers to inclusive conversations are making offensive jokes in harmful even if you really are only joking, as there is chance that some people take them personal. Some individuals think that it is acceptable to make offensive jokes or stereotype groups of people as long as you don't really hold offensive views. But here is something to think about. People who do support negative stereotypes and hold racist, sexist, or other offensive views will feel justified whenever they hear such jokes. This means that racism, sexism, and other forms of bigotry go unchallenged. Do not make jokes that rely on disparagement humor and let others know that you don't find them funny. Discussing discrimination outright can actually cause people to be less willing to accept diversity. Some people will perceive such discussion as a personal attack and become defensive. Many people are unaware of their biases, and any attempt to talk about diversity is seen as a suggestion of prejudice. The tendency to take an objective conversation personally has derailed many an inclusion discussion. Even worse, talking about bias often reinforces it. In some cases, this is a "don't tell me what to do" response. In other cases, it's more complicated. People can leave inclusivity discussion assuming that discrimination is a widespread and therefore acceptable state. Now, I am going to give you some useful tips that will help you to be a master of inclusive communication. Don't emphasize on characteristics if it is necessary to do so. For example, let's suppose that you are telling your team that an employee from another department is scheduled to work with them on a new project. This employee, a man called Slim, happens to be quarrelsome nature. It would not be appropriate to say, "Salim, the quarrelsome guy from Department X will be joining us on Monday." Salim's orientation is not relevant to his work, so drawing attention to these characteristics is not necessary. Don't assume a person's gender or sexual orientation. Always choose gender neutral terms if possible. For example, if your manager is leaving the company and you do not yet know the gender of their replacement, it is more appropriate to use word they in reference to the possible candidate instead of he or she until a permanent replacement is selected. It is better to use general terms like partner or significant others instead of wife, husband, and so on. If you need to talk about someone's disability, do so in neutral terms. It is true that many people with disabilities do suffer as a result, but it is presumptuous to make statements such as Pervez suffers from deafness or Mariam is affected with schizophrenia. Always focus on a person, not on their disabilities. Do not define somebody by their condition or illness. For example, it is better to say Farrukh has depression rather than Farrukh is a depressive, or Farrokh is depressed. Making assumptions based on someone's nationality, ethnicity, or other characteristics is offensive because it shows a lack of respect for someone's individual talents and personality. This philosophy stays true even of positive stereotypes. For example, if you meet a Chinese accountant, it would be inappropriate to suggest that Chinese people naturally make good accountants because Asians are so good at math. Show respect for race and authenticity through proper capitalization in written communication. For instance, Native American, Black, the Punjabis, the Muhajirs, and the Pakhtuns, the Balochis, etc., should always be capitalized. If in doubt, look up the terms in a dictionary or use a reputable online resources. Bear in mind that in some instances, it is acceptable for members of a group to use words that would be offensive if used by outsiders. For example, some members of a certain community refer to themselves with some specific word. However, this word is usually considered offensive if used by any other person. If in doubt, any loaded terms that have historically been used to insult or belittle others are best to be avoided. Always avoid patronizing individuals or group of people. If you have a disability, you might have heard someone describe you as a brave or inspiring for carrying out normal day to day tasks such as cleaning your home, going to work, or exercising at the gym. You should avoid all these kind of words. It is possible to hold productive, healthy discussions about inclusion. Doing so requires authenticity and vulnerability, both of which requires a safe, non-judgmental environment and a degree of mutual trust. The society we grow up in influences by our biasness. You might not want to confront them and you may not agree with them, but they are most likely present. Few people, if any, grow up without observing some societal prejudices. Identifying bias in yourself doesn't make you a bad person. Instead, it serves as a reminder of how pervasive social conditioning can be. Always adjust your speaking style. When discussing inclusion and bias, it is best not to speak in absolutes. Expressions like everyone and we all should be avoided. A person from a different culture or background is likely to have a very different experience than you. So avoid using language implying everyone feels or thinks the same way. Always ready to listen and accept. Be aware that different cultures, ethnicities, and even genders have different communication styles. Welcome all these different styles and methods of communication and strive to understand how individuals prefer to interact. The more comfortable people are that you are hearing and validating their experience, the more openly they will talk about inclusions. Now, are you ready to practice what you have learned so far? So, today we have two exercises for practices. In first exercise, you have to think that when talking about particular groups, do you express assumptions or stereotype comments, whether positive or negative? Next time you take part in a conversation that includes a discussion about other people, consider whether your choice of word is respectful or not. Could you be a more inclusive communicator? If applicable, make a note of where and how you could improve next time around. In second exercise, You have to switch on the TV or go on YouTube and find a show that features a lot of dialogues like current affairs or political analysis. Watch it for 15 to 20 minutes, then make a list that whether the people taking part in the conversation upholding any negative views or beliefs about particular groups or individuals. Do they respect each other's views? Do they respond others with respect and dignity? Do you feel any biasness in that show? Now ask yourself that did you ever hear similar language in your everyday interactions? If so, how could you challenge it and how you improve yourself? Thank you very much. Here we finish this lecture on how to become inclusive communicator. We hope that you enjoyed much and learned a lot of new things with us. We are waiting for your valuable feedback. Keep watching our YouTube channel. For more upcoming lectures and trainings, please subscribe our YouTube channel.